Okay, before I even start this video, if you're just here for the accurate default Mii Fighter QR codes, here they are. Please go spread them around, repost them, I don't know, whatever. Okay, anyways. In 2014, Nintendo released the fourth installment of the Super Smash Bros. Series, Super Smash Bros. For 3DS and Wii U. Along with the returning characters from the previous installments of the series, Nintendo also introduced many new characters from their other franchises. Among these new characters were the Mii Fighters, where Miis finally made their debut in Super Smash Bros. As customizable fighters. There are three types of Mii Fighter: Mii Brawler, Mii Gunner, and Mii Sword Fighter. Each Mii Fighter category is often represented by their own distinct default Mii within the game's menus, as well as other media such as amiibo and trailers. These placeholder characters only exist to represent the different Mii Fighter types. They're meant to be replaced by the player's custom Mii in the actual game. Because of this, we don't often get to see the default Mii Fighters within gameplay, other than in some promotional material. This is why you may not have considered the question, what do the Mii Fighters actually look like? I mean, what set of adjustments would you need to do in the Mii Maker to recreate these Miis? This seems like a relatively simple question, right? I mean, they're basically default Miis and their renders are right here. Well, as it turns out, the answer is far more complex than you'd probably expect. Normally, if you're trying to figure out the proportions of an official Nintendo Mii, all you have to do is check out their Mii Library page. Mii Library being a fan website run and owned by internet user and Mii enthusiast Alice / HEYimHeroic, which documents Miis used in official material, and is considered to be the most trusted, unofficial source on the subject. But in the case of the Smash 4 Mii Fighters, they aren't available on the site. And why is this? Well, the reason is quite simple, actually. Their Mii data isn't in the game at all. Now, you might be asking, what about the Mii Fighter trophies in Smash 4? Those use the default Miis. And yes, the models for the default Mii Fighters are technically in the game. However, these files aren't actually Mii data. I know, what the hell is Mii data? Mii data is basically a type of file format used to store Mii's data, the information that tells the console, this is a Mii, here are the positions of the facial features, here's the name and height, etc. This is how Miis are usually used in-game. In the case of Smash 4, I assume the exact file format used would be CFSD/FFSD, since that's a format associated with the 3DS and Wii U. But with the Mii trophies, they're literally just regular 3D models. They're not Miis at all, technically. To make a comparison, it's sort of like the difference between having a photograph of a building versus the blueprint for that building. Sure, they're both a piece of paper that represents that structure, but only one of them holds the actual detail used to create that building, even though they're both depicting the same building. So then, what do you do if you want to remake a building to look exactly like the original, but all you have are some photos of it? Well, you gotta just eyeball a new blueprint, I guess. One such attempt was made by fellow Mii content creator Emi Arcade, who did a pretty good job using the official Mii Fighter renders in combination with Miitomo to line up the Mii's features in a relatively accurate manner. However, with this method, there's still a lot of room for error. You see, Mii face parts sit floating slightly off the surface of the model, and this gap can result in features appearing as if they were lower or higher on the face than they really are, depending on the angle and perspective. The parts also aren't just laid flat across the face, they're slightly wrapped around it, which can create even more distortion. Another big issue is that it's pretty clear the official renders have definitely received some touch-ups in Photoshop or whatever it be. As we would find out later, somebody definitely had to have given Mii Sword Fighter a major nose job. So, in short, Emi's interpretations were accurate to the renders, but the renders themselves can't fully be trusted. Their reliability is questionable. There have been plenty of other attempts at recreating the Mii Fighters to varying success, but the reason I bring up Emi's attempt in particular is just because it was a major inspiration to this project, so shout out to him. I'll link his stuff below. This subject was initially pointed out to me by my friend DreamCloud1283, who was also the one who showed me Emi Arcade's post, after I showed them a piece of, thankfully unpublished at the time, work where I spoke about the Mii Fighters' appearances and had suggested that the face of Mii Sword Fighter was identical to Guest B, which unbeknownst to me was completely false. And if you're curious, that unpublished work was the Mii Fighter segment of my Mii iceberg. Embarrassed at my mistake and realizing that nobody actually really knew the truth for sure, I realized solving this mystery was my duty. And by my, I mean our, because I roped my good old friend Dreamcloud into this experiment as well. Don't worry, they were more than happy to participate, right? An assumption many people, including myself, have made is that the Mii Fighters' faces are pretty much identical to the default Miis, save for some slight color and option changes. And while you could make the argument these Miis are extremely similar on a strictly visual level, from a technical standpoint, looking at the exact Mii Maker proportions of their face parts, they are definitely not just recolors of the default Miis. So how do we figure out the exact construction of the Mii Fighters' faces? Birth of the Mii scientists. like mad scientists, but me. As soon as I realized this mystery had no 100% proven conclusion, I knew the Mii Fighter trophy models had to be our key to success. Although the data isn't here, they're still entirely 100% accurate 3D models with textures and everything. If we wanted to go back to the building comparison, the official renders would be like one terrible blurry photo where you can hardly even make out what the building looks like, and the trophy models would be like a 360 photo shoot of the whole building. So, a plan was devised. Line up the Mii Fighter trophy heads in Blender, along with the models of the default male and female Miis for reference, then use those references to recreate the Mii Fighters in Miitomo while documenting each step. Once the Miitomo iterations are as accurate as we can get them to be, we would take screenshots of them and import said screenshots into Blender, then just overlaying them over the trophy models to see how accurate they are. And, well, you might see the issue with this plan. Just visually comparing screenshots still leaves a lot of room for mistakes. This is the plan we initially started with, but as will be explained in more detail later, we did end up switching to a far more accurate method further on, which involves getting the textures of our Miitomo recreations and then literally just swapping them directly onto the models themselves. So anyways, with our initial plan in mind, not the texture swapping one yet, we began the first step. I lined up all the Mii heads in Blender, and one by one, with careful comparisons, we made our first set of estimates. Something I, of course, took notice of while working on Gunner's recreation is the fact that her eyebrows do not match her hair color. They're actually brown. Yes, Mii Gunner has brown eyebrows, not red. Brown! Get it right, goddammit! This raises an important question though. Does this detail imply that Mii Gunner's natural hair color is actually brown? I mean, realistically, it doesn't really mean anything, but like the guest Miis, she was probably designed to reflect the developer's idea of a relatively average person. Now, I don't know about in the early 2010s when Smash 4 was released, but it's very common nowadays to see women in Japan walking around with their hair dyed pretty much this exact color. And yeah, it's definitely not their natural hair color. So I don't think it would be too far-fetched to imagine the devs intended her to have this look. Her eyes are also black, which is a very rare trait for someone with naturally red hair, so, maybe. That's just my game theory, though. I'm not the CEO of Mii Gunner. Just forget I said that. Anyways, after completing our first round of recreations, we both had a hunch that some things weren't quite right. And again, this was before my stupid ass realized we could just swap their textures. So yes, this round we were still just overlaying screenshots of the Miitomo Miis with the Mii trophies to compare accuracy. There was also a small discrepancy between the line thickness in Blender's studio lighting versus Miitomo, so that made comparing the Miis more difficult as well. Nevertheless, after lining up as best I could and us looking over the visual comparisons, it was still pretty clear that we had made some mistakes. Mii Brawler lined up fairly well, however his eyebrows were definitely slightly off. Our estimates for Mii Gunner were much further off. Not only did we get her eyebrow positioning wrong, but her eyes and nose as well. In retrospect, it makes complete sense that her facial features were moved closer together. From a character design perspective, it actually feels pretty intentional, giving her a pretty subtle but still noticeably cuter look compared to a default Mii. Sword Fighter was also pretty off. I really had no idea his nose was that big. That's not an insult, by the way. No hate to all my awesome big nose havers out there, although you guys probably sniffed that out already. With our first round of testing complete, we began our corrections. Other than some struggles with figuring out Mii Gunner's eyebrows, the second round of recreations were a success. Or so we thought. At this point, everything had basically been wrapped up. We had still only used screenshots for the comparisons, but I was pretty sure these designs were correct, and no better methods had occurred to me at the time. We had our original article fully written and published on my website, and everything had gone to plan. For all we knew, the project was completely finished. All of this changed one cold winter morning when I was working on a completely unrelated Mii Gunner 3D model project. I'd used the QR codes from our recreations of the Mii Fighters to download 3D models and textures of them using Mii Renderer and Cat's Mii Creator, two fan-made projects. I was working on my beloved Mii Gunner's model when I just randomly, maybe it was accidentally, I don't remember, selected the trophy texture instead of our recreation and... Oh shit! I was trying to play around with textures to do different facial expressions, and I found this one, which is the one from the trophy. When I you probably already know where this is going. When I replace the texture, the eyebrows are different. We got it wrong. Yeah, that's right. After switching out all of our recreation textures with the ones from the trophies, it was clear they were wrong. Well, they weren't that far off. In fact, Brawler's was actually completely correct. Such a simple man. His face was by far the easiest. But yeah, there were a couple small mistakes with Sword Fighter and Gunner. In hindsight, the original method was totally flawed. We never should have done it like that. Literally anything, any discrepancies could leave massive gaps for mistakes, which clearly did happen. Luckily, I doubt many people saw the article before it was fixed because, well, unfortunately, nobody really reads entire articles these days. Also, it wasn't really up that long before we fixed it. With that discovery, though, it was now just a process of adjusting the faces, swapping the textures to test them, and adjusting them some more if needed until we had the definitive recreations. And, as seen here, the textures are now identical. Mii Brawler, Mii Sword Fighter, and of course, Mii Gunner. I can now, without a shadow of a doubt, say that our recreations are 100% accurate to their official designs. Pretty much all possible room for error is sealed off, finally! For the sake of transparency, I did also link the download for the Blender file with all the comparison stuff in our original article, which you can go download and check out yourself if you want to for some reason. And of course, if you feel like it, you can also read the article we created about this subject or any of the other articles and lists on my website. One of the reasons I decided to turn this particular article into a YouTube video is just because I always see these slightly inaccurate recreations of the default Mii Fighters, and every time I see them, if only they knew. If only they knew. Mii Gunner's eyebrows are not red! Of course, I'm not gonna go be an asshole and start correcting people, but I figured making a video about it would be a good way to share this information while making something actually entertaining and fun out of it. Plus, I really felt like with a bit of fleshing out, this article would make a perfect hyper-specific Mii video essay, which is apparently my specialty. I'll be honest, I've been feeling pretty burnt out on YouTube ever since I finished my second Mii iceberg, but this video really reminded me why I do YouTube in the first place. Because I love yapping about extremely specific subjects that I care way too much about. This is a subject I'm very passionate about. Well, probably a big factor just being that Mii Gunner is involved, but I really enjoyed making this video, which is something I haven't been able to say in a while, to be honest. And again, I have to thank my friend DreamCloud, who was the co-writer too, and just generally helped me a bunch in the research of the original article this video is based off. Anyways, I hope you guys learned something cool, and if you have any more extremely specific video ideas, please let me know. Seriously, this was my last good idea. As usual, my commissions are always open if you want to support me and get some cool art. I just got approved for a VGen artist access. Check out my website for tons of fun, silly stuff, and live, laugh, love Mii Gunner.